All right, so today we're going to jump into something that I think affects pretty much every single aspect of our lives,
Mhm.
and that is communication.
That's
And
it.
communication is something that, we do all day, every day,
Yeah.
whether we're at home, whether we're at work, whether we're,
With
just
friends,
about and about. Yeah.
and it's
And
it's vital, really, isn't it, to just about everything we do.
it's so important. And I think that, we often think of communication as just being about,
Yeah.
the words we say
Mm.
or, the way we write an email, but it's
Mm.
so much more than that.
It is.
It really is about how we connect with people,
Absolutely.
how we build relationships, how
Yeah.
we get what we want in life, how we,
Mhm.
present ourselves to the world. And so I'm really excited about this deep dive
You too.
because we're going to be looking at
Mm.
uh, the insights from a trial lawyer named Jefferson Fisher. And these insights were actually shared in a conversation he had with Mel Robbins on her
Mhm.
YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really fascinating.
I've seen that one, yeah.
You've seen that one. Like,
Okay.
good,
It's a good one.
good. So you know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Um, and I think what's really interesting about Jefferson Fisher's perspective
Mhm.
is that, he is a trial lawyer.
Yeah.
He's somebody who has to communicate for a living
Right. Right. Absolutely. And in a very high stakes environment
in a very high stakes
where
environment
every word counts.
where every word matters,
Yeah.
where, the way you present yourself, the way you
Yeah.
frame your arguments
Mhm.
can really make the difference between winning and losing.
Winning or losing, absolutely. Yeah.
High stakes.
High stakes. And so I think that his insights are really valuable for all of us
I agree.
because, even if we're not in a courtroom,
Yeah.
we are.
Every day is a courtroom in
Yeah.
a way.
Every day is a courtroom in a way.
Yeah.
It's a great way to put it.
We're constantly
Yeah.
negotiating and persuading and trying to get our point across,
True.
be understood.
So whether you're preparing for a big presentation
Uh,
or you're
a job
interview about to have a difficult conversation with a family member,
yeah.
or you just want to, feel more confident and
Mm.
articulate,
Just more in control of how you come across.
more in control of how you come across in your everyday life.
Yeah.
This deep dive is for you.
That's
and
I see you.
so
Let's jump in.
let's jump into it. One of the first things that Jefferson Fisher talks about is the power of words.
Yeah, the power of words.
And he says something.
And he should know because that's his stock and trade
And he should know
as
it,
a lawyer.
because as a lawyer, words are his tools.
Yeah.
Um, and he says something really simple,
Mm,
but really profound.
okay.
He says, what you say is who you are. That's simple and profound. As you say,
Right.
what you say is who you are. Because
Yeah.
for a lot of people, the main way they experience you is through your words.
It's true.
That's all they've got.
And, we might have all these
If you think about it.
wonderful intentions.
Yeah.
We might be, the kindest, most generous people.
The best of
Like
intentions.
on the inside.
Yeah.
It
But
doesn't matter if it doesn't come across.
if we don't communicate that,
Yeah.
if we're not
You've got to get that across.
able to express that through our words,
Yeah.
then people aren't going to know that about us.
That's right. And
know.
so
And they're going to judge you based on what they hear
they're going to judge us based on what they hear.
and what they see.
And that's really important to remember.
It is.
And he talks about how our communication
Mhm.
is essentially a compressed version of our entire personality.
It's a snapshot.
It's a snapshot.
It's like a tiny little
It's like this
just
little
file.
compressed
Sometimes
file of a
right.
huge personality. And so we
Yeah.
have to be mindful
You got to be so careful
of
of what we're putting out there.
what goes into that file
And
because it's going to get decompressed by the other person.
and it's funny because you were talking about how
Yeah.
we're in a courtroom every day,
Mm.
and I think that's such a great analogy.
Well, I mean, think about it. We're constantly
'cause
trying to
we're-
make our case.
we are constantly trying to
It's
first
constantly trying to get other people to see things our way,
we're constantly trying to
and be understood
yeah,
and get our needs met. So
absolutely.
it's so important.
Communication is really
Yeah.
the tool that we use to do that.
It's the tool.
Um,
Yeah.
and Fisher talks about how
So
even if you are an introvert,
even if you're
doesn't necessarily
somebody who doesn't like to talk a lot,
revel in being the center of attention or
Right.
talking all the time.
you can still
You can still be a great communicator.
be a great communicator.
Yeah.
It's not about
It's not about how many words you say.
the quantity of words.
Think about the quality of
Yeah.
what you say
And-
and the impacts.
and the impact.
Yeah,
And so I think that's really encouraging
I think so
for
too.
people who might feel a little bit shy
It can be learned.
or intimidated by the idea of communication.
Absolutely.
Because it's a skill that you can learn,
It is.
and it's something that you can get better at.
With
This.
like anything.
Okay.
Practice makes perfect.
Okay. So
Yeah.
let's talk about arguments.
Okay.
Because I think this is an area where a lot of people get tripped up.
It can be.
And
Fisher has a really
interesting perspective on arguments.
Okay.
He says
Yeah.
that arguments are like not battles,
Interesting. So not about winning or losing,
not about winning or losing.
more about untangling.
It's about untangling.
Okay, like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so instead of going into an argument
So you shift your mindset.
with the mindset of like,
Yeah.
I need to win,
Totally.
I need to prove the other person wrong.
You go in there thinking,
Let's
how
do
can
that.
we
You go in there thinking,
how can we untie this knot?
how can we untie this knot? How can
Right.
we understand each other's perspective?
I love that it changes the whole dynamic.
And he talks about how
Yeah.
one of the biggest problems with communication
Yeah.
is that what is sent is not what is received.
What is sent is not what is received.
We've all been there, right?
We've all been there. Where you think you've made
Perfectly
something
clear.
perfectly clear.
Something
Yeah.
perfectly clearly,
And it's been totally misinterpreted.
and the other person is hearing something completely different.
Sometimes deliberately, sometimes not.
Sometimes deliberately, sometimes not.
Sometimes it's just people hear what they want to hear.
He has a really simple
Yeah.
but really effective piece of advice.
Okay, I'm all
He
eating
says instead of getting defensive
Yeah.
when somebody
Which is the natural instinct.
misunderstands you, just ask them,
Yeah.
what did you hear?
Oh, I like that. What did you hear?
With that simple question
Simple but powerful.
can
It
really
really shifts the focus.
shift the dynamic of the conversation.
Doesn't it?
Because instead of,
It takes you out of the defensive mode.
doesn't it? Because instead of,
It takes you out of
Yeah.
the defensive
and
mode.
it makes you curious about their experience.
Curious about what they heard.
And how they interpreted it. And
Yeah.
so
Which is really where the breakdown happened.
you're able to then kind of
Yeah.
backtrack and say, okay,
And clarify.
that's what I meant.
This is what I meant when I said X.
And this is how
This is what I was trying to get across.
I can clarify.
Yeah. Because they might have just completely
And he also talks about
or gone off on a tangent.
based on a misinterpretation.
Using the word why in
Ah,
arguments.
Okay, why is that?
Because
Why should we avoid why?
why questions often come across
I do this all the time.
as accusations.
Yeah,
So instead of saying,
because I want to know why.
why did you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Which immediately puts the other person on the defensive.
Which is fair enough.
He suggests
But-
using what
Okay, so what instead of why?
questions.
Yeah.
So you could say,
Give me an example.
what was going through your head
Okay.
when you did that?
Oh, I see. So what was going through your head? What were you hoping to achieve?
Instead of, why did you do that?
Right.
Yeah.
And it just,
So it sounds less accusatory.
it creates a more
It
curious
can be
and
more
more
collaborative.
collaborative
Yeah.
tone.
Okay. I like
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're untangling knots.
We're untangling knots.
No, not
Not
battling. We're using what?
using what, not why.
Yeah.
What else have we got?
Let's talk about directness.
Okay. Directness.
Because I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with.
I struggle with this one.
And
Yeah.
Fisher has a really
Sometimes I think I'm being too direct,
interesting.
and other times I think I'm not being direct enough. Perspective on this. It's hard to find that balance.
He says
Mm.
that we often avoid
So what's his take?
being direct
Yeah. What
because
does he say?
we think we're being kind.
Oh, so we're trying to protect people's feelings.
We think we're protecting people's feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. By not being direct.
But he actually thinks that.
So he thinks that's a mistake.
That can be more cruel.
Okay, interesting.
Okay.
So he thinks it's actually
Okay.
kinder to be direct
Yeah.
than to beat around the bush.
Giving the person the opportunity
should deal with
to
the
deal with the truth.
Interesting.
To actually process what's going on.
So rip off the Band-Aid.
So
Get straight to it.
he advocates for being
it's right.
direct, but doing it with kindness.
There's the caveat with kindness.
And so it's not about
So how do you do that? How do you be direct but kind?
brutally honest?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like a contradiction.
Being truthful,
Yeah.
but also
Because if you're too direct
you can be hurtful.
and understanding,
So how do you find that balance
and
between directness and kindness?
he says that
Yeah.
one way to do this
What's his secret?
is to actually tell the person
What?
that you're being direct with them.
Okay.
Because you know they can handle it.
So, like, I'm being direct with you because I know you're strong enough to handle it.
Go.
I'm being direct with you because you deserve the truth
Yeah.
or something like that.
It's almost like you're giving them...
So you're acknowledging that,
Well,
what
no.
you're about to say.
At the same time
That
that you're delivering...
Difficult news.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And it's also a way of
Yeah.
sort of setting the stage.
Setting the expectation.
And saying,
Yeah, and it's also a bit like,
I'm going to be honest with you.
you're giving them a little vote of confidence, aren't you?
I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
You're saying, I think you're strong enough to handle this. I respect you enough to be honest with you.
I know that you can deal with this.
Which is really nice.
And he also talks about
So what else?
the power of
Yeah.
telling people
Tell them what
qualities what you want them to have.
Okay, so tell people.
For example.
If you're about to have a difficult conversation,
Interesting.
you could say something like,
Give me an example.
I know that you
Yeah.
value transparency.
I know that you value transparency.
Or, I know that you're open-minded.
I know that you're open-minded.
And by saying that,
And so what happens when you say that?
you're actually
Do people kind of rise to the occasion?
kind of planting a seed.
Interesting. Yeah, like the Pygmalion effect.
Right.
Yeah. Where you
And you're
raise your expectations
let people live up to them.
to embody those qualities.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about
So we've talked about directness.
directness.
Yeah.
Um,
What else? What other
What nuggets of wisdom does he have for us?
framing conversations?
Craving conversation.
Because I think this is
Something that can be real helpful.
that all about
In
in
terms
terms of
of-
setting expectations.
Yeah,
and
because I think we've all been in situations where you kind of start talking to somebody
wow,
and you have no idea where the conversation's going.
meandering.
Conversations.
It's like go nowhere.
Yeah, through a conversational park.
Right.
You end up nowhere.
And so
Yeah.
Fisher's advice is to
So what's the antidote?
actually tell people
Yeah.
how you want the conversation to end.
How you want the conversation to end interesting
That's the beginning.
at the beginning. So set the expectation right up front.
So you could say something like,
What could you say?
I'd like to talk about X,
Okay. I'd like to talk about X.
and I want to walk away
And I want to walk away
from this conversation knowing why.
knowing why. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're basically giving them a roadmap
I'd like to talk about X,
of where the conversation is going.
and I'd like to make a decision about Z by the end of this conversation.
And what I need from you is
Yeah, and it just
I like that
it creates a much more.
because then it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
Focused and
Yeah.
productive conversation.
It's not this kind of meandering.
Everybody knows
Right.
where they're
Yeah.
going,
They know where they're going.
and they know what the goal
And
is.
that's what the goal is.
Yeah. Okay. So that's framing
That's framing.
conversation.
Let's talk about dealing with difficult people
Okay. Now this is a good one
because
we all have them in our lives.
it's
Don't we?
those-
Those difficult people, the ones that you just want to avoid.
at some point in our
I
lives.
can't.
Right.
to
And
accept-
so Fisher has
Dealing with difficult people.
really
What's he say about that?
good advice on this.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm interested to hear this.
Let's start with
Okay, let's break it down.
the people you just don't like.
Okay,
Well-
so those people you just don't like,
There are certain people
Right,
that you
that's
have to
fine.
deal with.
Yeah.
And
but you can't avoid them.
you can't always avoid them.
Yeah, because they're your boss or your colleague,
They might be colleagues.
Well,
they might
it's
be family
a
members.
family member. Yeah.
And so Fisher's advice is
So what do you do? How do you handle those people?
keep it professional.
Okay, keep it
Yeah,
professional.
keep it neutral.
Keep it neutral.
Focus on the facts.
Well, and personal.
Don't get yeah.
Don't rise to the bait.
Yeah.
And just keep it factual.
Try to limit your interactions.
Limit your interactions as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because
your behavior
Try to-
reflects on you. You don't want to give them any ammunition.
to the onlookers.
Yeah.
It's like they say, never argue with a fool,
Exactly.
because onlookers may not be able to tell the difference.
And he actually
That's a good one.
uses that quote.
Yeah. Those words.
Never argue with a fool. Onlookers may not be able to tell the difference.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it's just a reminder that
Sometimes you just can't win.
sometimes you just have to
Yeah,
kind of
or
walk
walk
away. Yeah, or just disengage.
Now, what about those people,
So what
About
about belittling comments?
the belittlers, the ones that say
duh.
things that make those little snide remarks,
Designed to
Yeah.
kind of undermine you.
undermine you or make you feel small?
Right.
Um,
I hate those.
Fisher has a really interesting technique for dealing with this.
Okay, I want to hear this.
He says.
When somebody makes a belittling comment, ask them to repeat it.
Ask them to repeat it. Okay.
And
This often
what did you say?
catches them off guard.
Can you repeat that, please? Because they're expecting
So
you
they're expecting you to get upset
to react emotionally,
or defensive.
and instead,
You're just like, hold on, I didn't quite catch that.
can you say that again?
Can you run that by me one more time?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're calling them
It
out.
takes the power out of the comment.
You're making them own it.
Yeah. And then he suggests following up.
And then what
There they repeated it.
about their intent?
And then you say,
So you could say, did you say that?
did you mean to,
Did you say
did you say that to hurt my feelings?
Okay.
Okay. So you could do.
So you're making them really think about what they said
Puts the focus back on them
and why they said it.
and their behavior.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
So
That's a good one.
we talked about people who make belittling comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about people who are just downright disrespectful?
Okay. Outright disrespect.
Yeah. Fisher's advice
This is a tough one.
on this is
Yeah.
to use silence.
Silence. So just don't say anything.
When he says something disrespectful, don't
Just
react.
quiet. Okay. Okay.
What?
So how long should you be silent for?
10 seconds.
10 seconds. Okay.
Less.
That's a long time.
It feels like a long time.
It does feel like a long time when someone's
Mhm.
just been disrespectful to you. Yeah.
That's actually
And I could see how that would
really powerful
Oh,
because it
Clark.
gives you a chance
to give you a chance to kind of gather your thoughts
to
and not
compose yourself.
react in the heat of the moment,
Yeah.
which is usually a
Yeah,
mistake.
it also gives the other person
A chance
to maybe rethink what they've just said.
kind of realize
And you're not giving them the
what
satisfaction
they've just said.
of seeing you get upset. Okay,
Good.
so 10 seconds of silence.
After those 10 seconds,
Yeah.
he suggests
And then what?
saying something like, that's below my standard for a response.
Below my standard for a response. Okay.
Powerful
But it
boundary
really
set.
shifts the power dynamic.
Because
People
you're
have-
basically saying, I'm not going to stoop to your level.
You're essentially saying, I'm not going to engage with you on that level.
Yeah.
I'm better than that.
Yeah. I'm not going to dignify that with a response, but